Hold on tight, folks. Straight from Red Deer County, it's the Guillaume Clou sans tête experience. Your rugged, sharp, trusty headless nail is here to hammer home the truth.
Bonjour, mes amis, c'est Guillaume Dubois, your humble clou sans tête, your nail without a head, coming at you live from the shop out here on the ranch in Red Deer County, Alberta. The wind's howling today, folks, kicking up dust like a herd of spooked cattle. But I've got the heater cranking and a cup of strong coffee to keep me going. Y'all settle in, 'cause we're hammering down a big old controversial topic today. Mark Carney, Jared Kushner, Brookfield Assets, Qatar, and a whole mess of details. It's got folks talking. This one's wild bronco to ride, so let's rope it in and get started. Now, I'm calling this one Nailin' the Big Deal, a headless take on Carney, Kushner, and the Qatar connection. See, there's this tangled web stretching from Canada's shiny new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, down to Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and over to the sandy dunes of Qatar with a big old company called Brookfield Assets riding shotgun. It's got trade deals, LNG debates, and a whiff of shady business that's got my rancher's nose twitching. So, let's break it down piece by piece and see if we can drive this nail home or if it's just going to bend under the hammer. First off, Mark Carney. This fella's been sitting in the Prime Minister's saddle since March 14th, 2025, and let me tell you, he's a slick one. Used to run the Bank of Canada, then the Bank of England, and before riding into Ottawa, he was chairman of Brookfield Assets, a big shot investment outfit. Back in the day, he was all about keeping fossil fuels in the ground, preaching that climate gospel, like he's saving the planet one windmill at a time. But here's where it gets muddy. Just a couple days ago, on March 27th, he pledged $200 million to the Cedar LNG project up in Kitimat, BC. That's right, LNG. Liquefied natural gas. The stuff he used to say we ought to leave buried. Now, I ain't saying he's flipped like a calf at Brandon time, but it's got folks wondering what's driving this sudden turnaround. Economic pressure, trade wars with Trump, or something fishier. Then we got Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and a real estate wrangler from way back. This guy's tied to Carney through a deal that's got more twists than a rattler's tail. Back in 2018, when Carney was still steering Brookfield, they cut a deal with Kushner Companies, Jared's family outfit, to lease a fancy Manhattan tower called 666 Fifth Avenue for 99 years. Price tag? A cool $1.2 billion paid up front. Now, Kushner was drowning in a $1.4 billion debt on that place. So this was like tossing a lifeline to a sinking steer. But here's the kicker. The cash came through Brookfield Property Partners, and guess who's a big investor there? The Qatar Investment Authority, QIA for short. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund sitting on $526 billion last I checked, and they're the ones who helped grease the wheels. Problem is, Jared was also a senior advisor to Trump at the time, whispering in his ear about Middle East policy. Folks like Senator Ron Wyden are still investigating if this was some kind of quid pro quo. You bail me out, I'll nudge Trump your way. That's a nail that's still rusting in the barn, waiting for answers. Now let's talk Qatar. These folks are the big dogs in LNG, world's top exporter, aiming to crank out 142 million tons a year by 2030. They've got cash to burn, and QIA's been pouring it into Brookfield, mostly for real estate like that Kushner deal. But here's where my rancher's gut starts rumbling. Some folks, like my buddy at Cat Canada TM, who's been jawing about this on X, wonder if Carney might have cut a deal with Qatar to keep Canadian LNG in the ground. Why? 'Cause if we don't ship our gas, Qatar's got less competition. Sounds like a tall tale, eh? I mean, there's no paper trail saying Carney and Qatar's Emir shook hands on it, and with Carney funding Cedar LNG, it don't add up. Qatar's too busy flooding the market with their cheap gas to care much about our little patch up here. Still, that QIA money in Brookfield's got folks squinting sideways, wondering if there's more to the story. Speaking of Brookfield, that's where this all gets stickier than molasses on a hot day. Carney ran that outfit from 2014 to 2022, and they're not just into fancy towers, they've got a hoof in Canada's natural gas game, too. Back in 2018, Brookfield scooped up Enbridge's gas gathering and processing business for $4.31 billion, 19 plants, 3,550 kilometers of pipelines, right here in BC and Alberta. Now, that ain't directly tied to Cedar LNG, which is run by the Haisla Nation and Pembina with gas from Coastal GasLink, but it's close enough to make you wonder. Could Carney's old pals at Brookfield be riding the coattails of his LNG push? No hard proof, mes amis, but when your prime minister's got a past like that, it's a nail worth pounding on. And don't get me started on the NDP kicking up dust about Brookfield using Bermuda tax havens for green funds. That's another burr under the saddle. Let's zoom in on this Cedar LNG thing, because it's a big piece of the puzzle. This project's a floating export facility powered by Clean BC Hydro, and it's promising 300 construction jobs and 100 long-term gigs. Good news for folks up in Kitimat and the Haisla Nation who's co-owning it. The conference board says a 30 million ton LNG industry could pump $7.4 billion into Canada over 30 years, prop up 65,000 jobs. Heck, that's a herd worth grazing. But it's not all sunshine and hay bales. We're in a trade scrap with Trump, 25% tariffs on cars and parts, and he's calling it a direct attack. Carney's pushing for free trade between provinces by Canada Day, July 1st, 2025, to dodge them U.S. punches, and LNG could be our ticket to shipping gas to Asia instead of begging south of the border. Problem is, Qatar's flooding the market, and if demand tanks, we could be left holding a bent nail. But hold your horses. Here's where the green folks start hollering. Canada's got big climate promises. Cut emissions 40 to 45% by 2030, net zero by 2050. Cedar LNG's bragging about low carbon intensity, 0.08 tons of CO2 per ton of LNG, because it's hooked to hydropower. Industry says it's cleaner than coal, a bridge to renewables, but groups like the Pembina Institute and them sustainable development fellas are calling it a carbon bomb. They figure fracking, transporting, and methane leaks make it a loser for the planet, locking us into fossil fuels when we ought to be chasing wind and solar. Carney used to sing that tune. Keep it in the ground, he said. But now he's funding it? That's got the tree huggers and the oil patch folks in a barnyard brawl, and it's a sight to see. And don't forget that 2018 deal's still under the microscope. The U.S. Senate's poking around, asking if Kushner traded favors with Qatar for that bailout. No fresh word as of today, March 30th, 2025. But if they dig up dirt, it could splash mud on Carney too, seeing as he was steering Brookfield back then. Plus, we got Trump back in the White House stirring the pot with tariffs, and Carney's out there saying the old Canada-U.S. relationship's over. He's pushing LNG to diversify, but we're riding a tightrope with Qatar and the U.S. both in the game. It's like trying to herd cats while riding a bucking bronco, for Pete's sake. It's a mess. So, mes amis, what do y'all reckon? Is Carney playing a smart hand funding LNG to dodge Trump's tariffs and boost our economy, or is he selling out his green roots for something shadier, tied to Brookfield and Qatar? Could Kushner's deal be the tip of an iceberg we ain't seen yet? I'm just a rancher hammering away here, but I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them below, tag me at Guy Clue Sans Tate, component placement, or give a shout to at Cat Canada TM or at Energy BC. Who've been jawing about this too? Keep your heads down and your spirits up, folks. We're all in this corral together, and it's going to take more than a bent nail to sort it out. Until next time, this is your Clue Sans Tate signing off from Red Deer County.